are now live. Welcome to the show, everyone. And for your information, Wheelman, our viewer there, we are only 2 minutes late, so we are okay. Anyway, I keep saying that I want to cover something other than leftist violence on the show, and then they go and do a bunch of crazy stuff again during the week. So Portland and Chicago are well known for being chaotic under Democrat leadership, though their style of being so is different. We'll talk about that and how the government is responding. As for policy, this week Trump again threatened to levy tariffs on films produced outside the United States, and no one quite seems to know what he means by that, so we're going to talk about that. And on Unhinged, we are going to look at two Democrat representatives who really need to learn some emotional regulation and also install probably new brain-to-mouth filters. We are going to talk about all of this in episode 514 of the In the Tank podcast. Welcome to the In the Tank podcast. I am Linnea Lueken, your host. We also have, as usual, Jim Lakely, Vice President and Director of Communications at the Heartland Institute, and Sam Karnick, Senior Fellow at the Heartland Institute. Chris wanted to be here today, you guys, but he cannot. He's not feeling well, so please send him your prayers if you would. We also have Keely working in the background since Andy is out of town today. So we are working with a mixed house today. Anyway, so how are we all doing this week? Sam, you wrote a nice op-ed on Kansas's healthcare pricing program. I don't know if it went up yet, but what was that about? And if it ended up somewhere, where is it?
Thank you. Yes, I don't know exactly where it is placed yet, if it has. The idea is that they're trying to expand a program that keeps prescription drug prices down, supposedly. Unfortunately, what it does is it keeps the prices down for the people who do the prescribing, so the providers, but it doesn't necessarily keep them down for the people who actually have to pay for them. And in fact, that is what happens. It's a program that is meant to, as I say, keep prices down, but it ends up pushing them up and reducing access to prescription drugs. It's a very bad idea. Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll have to cover that one of these days when we see a little bit more movement on that end. Jim, what is new with you?
Oh, not much. I mean, it's nice. You can see I'm in flannel. It is now flannel shirt weather here in Northern Illinois, which I know I said that before we went live on air, and Linnea said she was jealous. This is a really great time of year. It's really nice to see that the leaves turn and the temperatures get a little bit lower. But yeah, before we get started, actually, I wanted to share something on the screen with everyone. On this day in 2009, President Barack Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize for what the Nobel Committee called, quote, his extraordinary efforts to strengthen international diplomacy and cooperation between peoples. Basically got the Nobel Peace Prize for not being George W. Bush and for being Mr. Hope and Change. And we don't talk about this topic on this podcast, but when I saw that on my Twitter feed today, I was like, there's another president who is actually achieving something pretty monumental in the Middle East, and I am more likely to get the Nobel Peace Prize than Donald Trump is. That's all I'll say.
Jim, it's interesting that they cited him for efforts. I remember Jerry Seinfeld said, "There's no Nobel Prize for attempted chemistry."
That's true.
Well, I saw someone on X comment that they hope that Trump does not get the Nobel Prize because then it would offer a thin sheen of legitimacy to a illegitimate program if he were to actually get it. So let's just let it die. How about that?
Well, you know what? They'll give it to Greta Thunberg.
Yeah.
She's the one who actually brought peace to the Middle East. So. Yeah.
For sure. All right, you guys. As usual, before we get started, if you want to support the show, you can go to heartland.org/inthetank and donate there. Please also click the thumbs up to like this video, and remember that sharing it helps to break through that YouTube suppression. Even just leaving a comment helps. If you're an audio listener, you can help us out by leaving a nice review. Okay, so we are getting right into it. We are going to take a look at Unhinged today. I only chose three topics, three kind of broad topics to cover this week, because I thought that we would probably spend a lot of time on Unhinged and and also on the second one, and so I wanted to make sure that we had plenty of breathing room for all three of these. Guys, we need to talk about Jay Jones and also Katie Porter. Originally, I was just going to talk about Jones for Unhinged, but a ton of stuff went kind of viral about Ms. Porter, so I think she deserves a little bit of attention as well. They are both unhinged. So, to begin, from the National Review, Democrat AG nominee Jay Jones fantasized about shooting former Virginia GOP speaker. He receives both bullets. On August 8th, 2022, so these are resurfaced text messages, a Republican state legislator received a disturbing string of early morning text messages from a former colleague, Jay Jones, this year's Democratic nominee for Virginia AG. Jones suggested that presented with a hypothetical situation in which he had only 2 bullets and was faced with the choice of murdering then Speaker of the House Todd Gilbert or 2 dictators, he'd shoot Gilbert every time, prompting pushback from his former colleague. So Jones said, 3 people, 2 bullets, Gilbert, Hitler, and Pol Pot. Gilbert gets 2 bullets. Spoiler, put Gilbert in the crew with the 2 worst people you know, and he receives both bullets every time. And his colleague Coiner said, Jay, please stop. And he just said, lol, okay. Coiner called his comments disqualifying for anyone seeking office. Later, he called her again, and he doubled down on the call, saying that the only way public policy changes is when policymakers feel pain themselves. At one point, the source said he suggested he wished Gilbert's wife would watch her own child die in her arms so that Gilbert might reconsider his political views, prompting Coiner to hang up the phone in disgust. Afterwards, Jones continued with a barrage of text messages saying that he was just asking questions. Coiner dismissed his excuse via text and chastised him for hoping Jennifer Gilbert's children would die. Rather than deny that he wished death on the kids, Jones responded by saying, yes, I've told you before, only when people feel pain personally do they move on policy. So, yeah, this guy cannot be attorney general. I wouldn't want him to be an attorney for like U.S. general toolboxes. But certainly no man who insists on that position or who wants to like kill his political opponents can be in charge of a state law enforcement apparatus, right? It's one thing to make the 2 bullets joke. It's an old one. It's a really old joke. I think I've seen it in like black and white films before. It's been around forever. But it's another to double down and then keep digging and make it worse as you double down. It is so bizarre. It's the weirdest behavior I've seen. We'll hold that. There might be weirder behavior later in this very segment, actually. So yeah, I would. Where are we at this? I mean, should someone like that be in charge of state law enforcement?
Certainly not. I think an interesting element of this is that the premise that he has is that you should be driven by your emotions, and that that public policy should be driven by your experiences and the emotions you feel about those experiences. That's really crazy. I mean, it's so stupid. It's unbelievable, and yet that is somewhat the direction that this country has gone for at least a couple of decades. Maybe you can trace it as far back as the Clinton era. But the notion that your credibility arises from your experiences and your background is simply an old-fashioned argument ad hominem. The argument from the person saying that if you don't have this or that character, this or that situation in your life, you don't qualify to talk about something. Well, that's the whole premise behind this, though, is that people who don't have the right ideas are not qualified to talk about them. That's why the rise of the internet and especially of the podcast era, has made such a change in things that these kinds of discussions would never have reached the public before. But now there are so many alternative sources that you can reach the public with these truths and expose the absolute madness that a lot of people are promulgating.
Absolutely. And Jim, I don't know if you have any comments for this one or if we should move along, but I just thought, like I said, it is one thing to make that joke in private to someone who's like a friend of yours or whatever. It's still in bad taste, but it's it's an understandable like emotion when you are frustrated with someone or hate them or whatever. But like to call her repeatedly and like be text spamming her, trying to double down and say, well, actually, I hope his kids die too, for real. That's like completely inappropriate, and I would agree that it's totally disqualifying.
Well, it is totally disqualifying. It's actually just coincidental. I've lived in Virginia and I've lived in California, which are two of the crazy people we're going to be talking about today, who are unhinged and cannot control their emotions. But let's a little bit of the background on this. He accidentally texted a Republican, a Republican colleague from when he was in the House of Delegates in Virginia. So this whole thing started because he texted the wrong person, and then just kept going. And then had to call her up and all this stuff, and so he just couldn't let it go. What I think is really important to understand is the reason he was going on like this and wishing not just the death of his political opponent, which is bad enough, but to say that you hope that his children are killed and that they die in their mother's arms, because that is the only way, apparently, he thinks a Republican will change his mind on a policy issue. I think in this case, it was on the Second Amendment. What's the reason he said those things and texted those things is obvious.
Yep.
One, he believes them, and two, he talks like that all the time with his own friends. There are Democrats in this country. We know this. I wish the media would wake up to this instead of always pointing everything at the right and Republicans and the danger and the white supremacy and Christian nationalism and all this other kind of nonsense. We have a very serious and dangerous democratic anger in this country that is extremely mainstream in democratic circles. He said those things because he says those things all the time. We had Democrats, thousands of them across the country, cheering, doing dancing TikTok videos after Charlie Kirk was slaughtered with a bullet to his neck in front of his wife and children. We had members of Congress saying that essentially Charlie had it coming. We have had assassination porn about Donald Trump since 2016. We've had plays done in public places. I think there was one in Central Park or somewhere in New York where Donald Trump was stabbed. I know that there's a video with Snoop Dogg in which Donald Trump was assassinated, shot right in the head, point blank. Then, of course, there's that infamous picture of the talentless Kathy Griffin holding the severed head of Trump up early in his first term. These things happen because a lot of people in this country are sick in the head. They have no sense of morality at all. And they say these things to each other all day, every day, for years and years. There is no other reason. There's no other explanation for it than that this is what they believe. And if there would be parties in the streets. Think about the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. People immediately went to TikTok and said into the camera, "Damn, they missed. I really wish it was just another half an inch to the left and he'd be gone." And so it is not a surprise at all that Jay Jones texted these things and said these things. And what's actually, again, I used to be a reporter in Washington, D.C., kind of routine, but kind of lazy journalism is that if there's some sort of controversy going on, It's the reporter's job to just basically track down everybody in that party and ask them if they condemn it or support it and all that sort of thing. That is a very common thing that's done in Washington, D.C. Journalism has a single, actually, it's happened. It took a few days. They had to be shamed into doing it. But very few Democrats have been asked if they support Jay Jones for Attorney General and whether he should drop out of the race or even apologize. And even Jay Jones's apology wasn't even really an apology. It was one of those awesome non-apology apologies in which he doesn't just say the simple thing, I'm sorry. I should have never have said that. In fact, I'm ashamed that I even thought that. That's disgusting. And for the betterment of our country and our politics, I'm going to pull out of this race.
Yeah.
He can't do that, and he won't do that because he doesn't have the morality in him to do it, because he really does, frankly, want the death of his political opponents. We're living in a time when wishing for the death of your political opponents is now completely mainstreamed, and our media is missing this story. This is only talked about on quote unquote right-wing media and on podcasts like this. It needs to be an enormous national story. And I am so sick and tired of every time there's some sort of fake controversy that the media says we have to have a national conversation about race or about misogyny. You know, the whole Me Too movement had to be a huge national conversation because Harvey Weinstein is a piece of shit. But we are not going to have a national conversation about basically death ideology and you know, ideation of death by the Democratic Party continually for years and years against their political opponents. It's disgusting.
Absolutely. Well, and, you know, if he had just stood up and said, yeah, those were a huge mistake. I didn't really mean it. You know, I was like drunk texting at midnight or whatever. People would believe him and they'd be like, yeah, okay, now drop out. Like, just do the honorable thing. But there is no honor in the Democrat Party. Speaking of no honor in the Democrat Party, I added this other stuff a bit last minute because I realized it was too unhinged to ignore. And I just, you know, Keely and I were joking about how this lady is like the lady from Misery. And we were like, we have to talk about this today. So, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you another Democrat candidate hopeful. This woman is running for California governor. So, Jim or Keely, can we play the clip that we have for this?
Well, we have, I'll play it. We have two clips. We have the one where she's yelling at her staffer, and we have the one where she lost it in a media.
Let's do the media interview first, and then we'll do the staffer. I want to show the audience both. As long as
the 40% of California voters who you'll need in order to win, who voted for Trump.
How would I need them in order to win, man?
Well, unless you think you're going to get 60% of the vote. You think you'll get 60%. Everybody who did not vote for Trump will vote for you. That's what you're saying.
In a general election, yes. If it is me versus a Republican, I think that I will win the people who did not vote for Trump.
What if it's you versus another Democrat?
I don't intend that to be the case.
So how do you not intend that to be the case? Are you going to ask them not to run?
No, I'm saying I'm going to build the support. I have the support already in terms of name recognition. And so I'm going to do the very best I can to make sure that we get through this primary in a really strong position. But let me be clear with you. I represented Orange County. I represented a purple area. I have stood on my own 2 feet and won Republican votes before. That's not something every candidate in this race can say. If you're from a deep blue area, if you're from LA or you're from Oakland, you don't have an experience.
But you just said you don't need those Trump voters.
Well, you asked me if I needed them to win.
So you don't.
I feel like this is unnecessarily argumentative. What is your question?
The question is the same thing I asked everybody, that this is being called the empowering voters to stop Trump's power grab. Every other candidate has answered this question. This is not
correct. And I said I support it.
So, and the question is, what do you say to the 40% of voters who voted for Trump?
Oh, I'm happy to say that. It's the do you need them to win part that I don't understand. I'm happy to answer the question as you have it written, and I'll answer it.
And we've also asked the other candidates, do you think you need any of those 40% of California voters to win? And you're saying, no, you don't.
No, I'm saying I'm going to try to win every vote I can. And what I'm saying to you is that...
Well, to those voters, okay, so you...
I don't want to keep doing this. I'm going to call it. Thank you.
You're not going to do the interview with us?
Nope, not like this. I'm not. Not with 7 follow-ups to every single question you ask.
Every other candidate has answered.
I don't care. I don't care. I want to have a pleasant, positive conversation in which you ask me about every issue on this list. And if every question you're going to make up a follow-up question, then we're never going to get there. And we're just going to circle around.
I am an investigative
I've never
reporter.
had to do this before, ever.
You've never had to have a conversation with
to end
a
an
reporter?
interview.
Okay, but every other candidate has done this.
What part of I'm me? I'm running for governor because I'm a leader. So I am going to make.
So you're not going to answer questions from reporters? Okay, why don't we go through? I will continue to ask follow-up questions because that's my job as a journalist, but I will go through and ask these. And if you don't want to answer, you don't want to answer. So nearly every legislative.
I don't want to have an unhappy experience with you. And I don't want this all on camera.
I don't want to have an unhappy experience with you either. I would love to continue to ask these questions so that we can show our viewers what every candidate feels about every one of these issues that they care about. And redistricting is a massive issue. We're going to do an entire story just on the responses to that question. And I've asked everybody the same follow-up questions.
Yikes.
I'm that guy too. Holy crap.
Yeah, this guy. Yeah, he's like, what? Oh man. Wow. So yeah, and actually, Jim, it just like crossed my mind. In addition to the lady from Misery, who she also reminds me of, is Admiral Holdo.
Yeah.
Which, if you think about it, so that's my. Yeah, it's the whole. It was her line about like, I'm a leader. And it's like, oh, okay, well, you're a bad one, like a really bad one. Just amazing. I mean, what is there to say about that, really? She's lovely, really. She's a lawyer. She was once a representative from California. It's like she's insisting that she's never like had follow-up questions before, and they're not hard questions. All she has to say is, oh, do you need extra Republicans to win? And she can say, well, we'll see. I'm going to try and get every vote that I can. And then the reporter would say, okay, and would move on. And she would ask her, how does this work? Or what would you say to the 40% of people that voted for Trump to get them to vote for you? And all she had to say was, look around. Is this really the America that you want? Blah, 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 that kind of thing. Like, it just boilerplate, easiest answers ever. And yet she just immediately loses it. It's amazing to see.
She's never had to do it. She's been in a safe seat, and it's easy for her to get by, and all she has to do is throw out the normal talking points and say Trump bad, Trump man, orange man bad, and so on and so forth, and nobody questions her about it. The fascinating thing about modern day media is that there is an alternative, that this material can get out, and now these people will be called out on it. If you spare the rod, you spoil the child, and we've turned our politicians into children, and the only way to do that is to question them on these things, and when they act like as they are prone to do, let it be seen, and let the public decide if they like that, and they want somebody who is. I don't know if you'll show another clip or anything, but or more information on this. If they want somebody, let's say, who's like this person, then they can have it, good and hard, but they'll be sorry down the road.
Yeah, I mean, oh yeah. So this is a little thing, just a little bit of gossip news. So her ex-husband, who divorced her, said that she was like physically and verbally abusive to him throughout their marriage. And yeah, right. Can never see that. And she had poured scalding hot mashed potatoes on his head during a fight. That's nice. Amazing. He was routinely called a effing idiot and effing incompetent by his rage-prone spouse, who also shattered a glass coffee pot on their kitchen counter when she felt their house wasn't clean enough.
Wow.
Misery. Yeah, she's coming at him with that hammer.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. What's interesting, but actually we're going to play another clip that's a lot shorter, but it's a good one. But you realize what set her off was the question of whether, if she wants any of the 40% of Californians who voted for Trump to vote for her. The answer is no, because Trump voters are deplorables. They're Nazis. They're fascists. Why? What self-respecting Democrat would want any of those horrible people to support them? That's why that's why this went off the rails. She didn't even have the grace to say that she would want the votes of anybody who supports Donald Trump. He has been so villainized in the eyes of the Democratic Party and the left that to even want their supporters to support you is absolutely verboten. You can't have that.
Yeah, that doesn't bode well for the future. So we have this other clip too of how she treats her subordinates. So that's nice.
We're going to lose more than 500,000 Californians dying prematurely to air pollution and other problems. And the state could lose. Get out of my fucking shot.
I wanted to tell you that that's actually incorrect. It's not that it's electric vehicles. It's that if we don't meet the commitments under the Paris Climate Accord.
Okay, it does. Okay, you also were in my shot before that. Stay out of my shot. Okay, I'm going to start again with electric vehicles saving us money. Perfect. Okay.
I think she's on a Zoom call, like a Zoom interview with Jennifer Granholm and some other people in attendance on this one. And that's, yikes, what a group. Oh boy.
Yeah, she's that's some kind of stage thing where they're talking about promoting electric vehicles and all that stuff. This was in 2021. I do love that her staffer is wearing a freaking mask in the background. Of course she is. She's working for a Democrat. But look, do you know how extraordinary it is to be considered the worst of the most horrible bosses in Washington, D.C. and in Congress? Do you understand what an amazing achievement that is? Washington, D.C. is lousy with horrible bosses. The people that end up matriculating into D.C., they get a little bit of power and they go absolutely bananas with it. It is notoriously a horrible place to work. I have friends, college buddies, who end up working on the Hill, have horror stories as long as the day is, can talk about it all day. But Katie Porter was probably one of the top 2 worst people to work for on Capitol Hill. And that takes some doing, and that's an example of it right there. I don't understand why anybody, I'm glad I don't live in California anymore. I might have to have, it's bad enough as it is right now with Gavin Newsom, but to have this woman being the governor of your state with those crazy eyes and that foul mouth and apparently a violent streak, I don't understand how these people survive in politics, Sam.
It's really pathetic, obviously, that somebody would do this kind of thing, but it's really hard to get people to be accountable for their actions.
No, why would you bring
nowadays.
this up on screen?
Pardon?
Why would you do this?
Because Sam's phone keeps going off and he won't turn it off, so I have to distract him.
Oh, I didn't know it was audible. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Jim, how could you do this to our audience?
Yes. So
Put that picture away.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm going to make it. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do that. That's what I'm going to do. I'm gonna make it full screen. Katie Porter. This is a very serious person here. Dresses up as Batgirl in 2019 on Halloween. She sat in committee hearings in that outfit.
I have a question actually for the both of you. Do you think that Katie Porter's antics actually are part of her appeal for her voters, for the people who vote for her? Would she look at these revelations as, well, they're infuriating, but they won't do me any harm?
So to her, like, kind of commie followers, I would say they wouldn't care the way that she was treating that reporter. I don't think that would faze them whatsoever. But I think that they would be fazed a little bit by her going off at her aide there. I think that would offend pretty much everyone. And typically, socialists are, freaked out by hierarchy to begin with, unless it's, them specifically that are in charge. I don't think anybody would like that, honestly. There are some sociopaths. I mean, I don't like to diagnose from afar because I'm not a doctor. I don't have any knowledge about any of that stuff, but she's got to be somewhere in cluster B. There's something wrong in the old noggin there with her. But yeah, it's very, very strange. John Z says, what do you mean the below 70 IQ crowd? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, but it seems like she's just very feisty, and she's a fighter for the, I think that she could probably take this whole thing and make it into an advantage for her that she's a fighter. J.D. Pritzker famously does that, and Newsom is trying to turn himself into that from prep school weenie to big tough guy who has a lot of tough talk for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe she can turn this into an advantage and say, I'm tougher than everybody. And if those Republicans don't do what I say, I'm going to throw hot potatoes on.
An engineer guy says, wasn't Kamala hard to work for? Supposedly yes, but her bad work environment was a different kind of bad work environment. Her bad work environment was like a depressive one, where she was like losing it in the background because she felt like she was losing, and so she was like extremely anxious and upsettable in that way, and would lash out at people over that. But she wasn't like randomly snapping on people. Especially, she at least had the wherewithal and the emotional control to not do that during a live stream.
Or it's that she had enough alcohol in her that she just didn't have the strength to do it. Hillary Clinton, it's well documented that she was an extremely abusive person. The Secret Service were bloody terrified of her.
Yeah, but again,
these are tough guys.
But again, Hillary Clinton is like wicked smart. I mean, she's evil,
right.
But she's very, very smart. So she knows how to turn that off for the cameras. This woman it's no good at all. All right. So I do want to move on from this. I promise that we don't just have a gossip channel. But I thought that you guys would get a kick out of those stories. So our second topic today that we're going to cover is Chicago and Portland are in total chaos. Democrats did it, and they're totally unrepentant. They seem to want the chaos to continue. They have no interest whatsoever in tamping down on the crime and unruliness and drug problems and all of that, especially for the case of Portland. But we're going to start with Chicago, since that's where the Heartland Institute is and where I grew up and where most of us lived, at least for some time. Fox News Digital reports that Mayor Brandon Johnson on Monday signed an executive order creating ICE-free zones across Chicago, limiting the ability of federal immigration agents to use city property and private businesses as staging areas for enforcement actions. The order covers schools, libraries, parks, other city-owned spaces, and allows private establishments to voluntarily participate in a citywide network that protects residents from ICE operations without a valid warrant. The announcement comes after a week of high-profile ICE actions in Chicago, including raids in South Shore, confrontations with residents, and the detention of elected officials, with Johnson described as aggressive and unlawful. More than 900 people have been arrested so far during Operation Midway Blitz since its launch on September 8th. What a name. Midway is a kind of a scary airport to drive to pick someone up from, according to the Department of Homeland Security. All right, so while that's going on, at the very same time, Chicago continues to suffer from widespread gang violence. 30 people were shot over the weekend. 5 of them died. And this might sound unrelated because it's not specifically illegal, but cartel activity or like illegal immigrant related stuff. But cartel activity is a known major factor in gang clashes, even in Chicago. So, Sam, I do want to know your take, though, on the Trump administration's conducting of these ICE raids. I'd like to know, like, what your understanding is of the play here between the state and the federal government on this issue. Illegal immigration is a federal problem. Can a state be a sanctuary like this for illegal immigrants and disallow federal arrests and deportations? Like, is that legitimate?
They can't disallow federal arrests and deportations. They cannot do that. They can be a sanctuary state if the federal government doesn't try to go in there and get the illegals out of there. So the problem that you have is that these states are used to getting away with this. And Trump has decided, well, we have the law on our side, so let's go and do this. And he clearly sees an advantage to that, both politically, but also in terms of doing the services that the government is supposed to do. The federal government does have to make sure that we're not being invaded by people who don't belong in this country and who have not gone through the proper channels to get here. That's certainly a federal job. So he has the not just the authority to do it, he has the responsibility to do it. The fact that other presidents have not fulfilled their responsibility doesn't simply throw away that point. So he should be doing this. The problem that you have is that, as I say, the states are used to getting away with this. So they look at it as some kind of weird change that Trump is bringing in, and it must be illegal. It must be unconstitutional to do this. The fact is that it's not. Now, ordinarily, what you would expect is when the federal government would say, we need to get in here and clean out this problem, that the governor of the state, first of all, and it really almost starts and ends with the governor of the state, quite frankly. The governor of the state would ordinarily say, oh, of course, well, let's work together to get this done. Maybe I don't, as a governor, want the National Guard in here, especially coming from Texas or whatever. And so let's work together to find a way where we can do this, the state itself. There's no cooperation, though. So what does the president have as an option? All he can do then is to call in the National Guard from other states. So it's been in Pritzker's power from the beginning to prevent this situation. And he has chosen not to do it because he has different ideas from the president, and he wants this to happen. Well, Brandon Johnson would be under, because municipal areas and municipal governments are under the state government. So Brandon Johnson would have to listen to Pritzker. But the fact is they're both on the same page, and that page is the very opposite from where Trump is at. So that's why this kind of thing happens. And when you get in a fight like this, you better be able to take out the other guy. And I don't see how they can even conceive that they have an advantage here. That's the problem. You have to have the leverage, and they don't.
Yep. Jim, I don't know if you want to weigh in. You live in Illinois in the North Chicago suburbs. So the not to dox you there, but
Thanks.
but now they're going to come get
specifically.
Yeah, here's your address. It's bad downtown, even in places that used to be nicer places. And there, it's not terrible during the daytime. It's not like, as bad as some of our other Democrat-run cities are, but it's not safe at night at all, almost anywhere, even in places that were historically, like the safe, wealthy areas. And it's getting worse and worse. So how do they get away with just letting this spiral out of control? Like, why don't they care? They live there too, don't they?
You would think, yeah. It reminds me of when Donald Trump, deployed the National Guard in Washington, D.C. Very clearly, there was not any, there wasn't any legitimate controversy over him doing that because that's federal land. Essentially, it's a federal district. And so there's a lot more leeway on doing stuff like that. And when the media would so while the Democrats were, complaining about it, demanding that this not happen, some enterprising reporters would go around in the neighborhoods, especially the not so great neighborhoods in Northeast DC. And people on the streets like, wow, this is great. Thank God somebody's doing something. This city has been a crime-ridden, poop hole for a long time. I'm going to try not to swear so much on this podcast today, but and so now, here in Chicago, it's crime is a big issue. You would think that you should be able to run a campaign on cracking down on crime of all kinds in Chicago and win in a landslide. I thought, I've lived here in the Chicago area for since 2010. And when Rahm Emanuel was running for governor, I thought he was the only Democrat who was practical and sensible and not completely captured by the left and had political ambition. And I thought Rahm Emanuel could be Chicago's Rudy Giuliani and telling everybody, to ignoring all of the criticism and just going ahead and fixing the city, starting with crime. He decided he didn't want to do that. He got scared off by the teachers' unions, and that was that. So Chicago had their chance. A couple of years, I don't know, what was that? I guess about 10 years ago, to fix their city, and they didn't get it. Now they've elected a moron commie in Brandon Johnson as mayor. I think like 2 months after his election, his approval rating was like 19%. It's like, well, the approval rating should have been that low way back then, and maybe the city could have been saved. But just on this ICE thing, though, I think it's clear. I think it's important to delineate here what's happening here. This is what a real insurrection looks like. The whole idea, and Sam had mentioned it in his comments, like the cities have gotten away with this for far too long, so-called sanctuary cities. And now that there is finally a president who is serious about enforcing immigration law, by the way, that Democrats approved. This is the best immigration law we have right now. I would like it even stricter, but this is the law we have, and we wouldn't have it if not for Democrats. This is as far as Democrats were willing to go when it comes to setting immigration policy in this country. And we have a president who decides, okay, that's the policy, I'm going to enforce it. The whole idea to have a sanctuary city, that's an insurrection. You can't have a sanctuary city where we're not going to have immigration law enforced here. You're safe, like in a church or something. We don't have sanctuary city laws for, I don't know, concealed carry. We don't have sanctuary cities for, polygamy. I mean, name it. I mean, it should never have been allowed, Sam, just like you said. And yet it is. But we have a president who's not going to allow it anymore. You don't get to decide federal immigration policy in your own city limits. You don't live in a little fiefdom or a kingdom, and you are not your own country. The last time the Americans decided that they were not going to adhere to federal law, I mean, it's happened a lot of times, but it started at some place called Fort Sumter. Now, this is not to get too crazy, but in principle, it's not all that much different. You don't get to basically have an insurrection against the federal government because you hate Trump. And again, we've talked about this on this podcast a lot, that the Democratic Party seems to be in a competition to crank up as much deranged, unhinged opposition to Donald Trump and his supporters as possible. And they just have to keep topping each other to the point where they're excusing. Guys, we had a shooting at an ICE facility. We've had 2 shootings at ICE facilities in the last month.
Yeah.
It's out of the news. Nobody talks about it anymore.
It happens all the time, actually.
It's happening all the time. Violence against ICE agents is up 1,000% over last year. And yet, again, the media is ignoring all of this because they hate Trump. They hate half this country, and they want this kind of chaos. I don't know if it's for ratings or what, but it's ideological is what it is. But what is happening in Chicago, what's happening in Portland, that's much more of an insurrection than anything that happened on January 6th, which was a 4-hour riot with infiltration by federal agents among the rioters. That is nothing compared to what we're having going on in this country right now. This is a real insurrection, and I'm afraid it's going to get worse before it gets solved.
Well, and
I want to follow. Oh, I'm sorry. I want to follow up briefly
ahead,
on the insurrection point, because this is quite critical. It is that. And I want to go back a little bit. Starting fairly early in the 21st century, a very quiet insurrection began, in which states decided that they were going to ignore the federal laws on drug classification in order to legalize cannabis. And when states did that, it was sort of a goofy thing. It wasn't seen as some very serious issue, but it really was an insurrection where they were nullifying federal law and saying we're not going to enforce it here, and we're not going to conform our laws to the law of the land, and the laws that are passed by Congress supersede all state and local laws unless they are exempted in some way. or the law is declared unconstitutional. So you have federal supremacy. And so what happened was that they started to undermine that with the marijuana. That led now to as they started to cut away at things, it led to the current situation where they're actually openly defying federal agents and the actions of the federal government within their borders. And that's obviously a big step away from marijuana dispensaries and the like. That's a big step. And then you move from there. What is next? We don't know. But if it is on the same scale of advance as this was, which was over the course of, say, a dozen years or so, things could get very serious, I think, much more quickly than anyone expects.
Yeah, I totally agree. And across the country, we have the same thing. It'd be one thing if it was just Chicago being Chicago, and Pritzker being a blowhard and all of that. But it's much worse than that. Meanwhile, across the country, Portland is doing as Portland does. You have a bunch of retirees during the day singing Woody Guthrie songs, and then at night, masked Antifa in black bloc attack ICE facilities, including Molotov cocktails and conducting actual attempted sieges. So it really is out of control. And like in Chicago, Portland and Oregon government is not interested in stopping it. I've even seen rumors that Portland PD have a large number of Antifa working in the police department. And so they just simply don't do anything. Breitbart reports that President Donald Trump has authorized the use of troops to protect Portland, Oregon, and any immigration and customs enforcement facilities that are under siege from an attack by Antifa. Trump said, at the request of Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, I am directing Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, to provide all necessary troops to protect war-ravaged Portland and any of our ICE facilities under siege from attack by Antifa and other domestic terrorists. Just yesterday, there was a White House roundtable on Antifa and kind of how their terror cells work. Basically, every single person at that table has been assaulted, many of them to the point of having to go to the hospital by Antifa just for reporting on them. So I strongly recommend all of you guys watch the full roundtable, but at least watch some clips from it. We do have some for you guys here. Do we have those?
Yep, here we go.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. President, for having us here. And not to sound like a broken record, but it needs to be said that Antifa is real. Yeah. It's real. It's a threat. I just saw them last weekend over in Portland while they're causing mayhem over there. And the reason why they're such a big problem is because we have Democrats and a lot of people in the mainstream media refusing to acknowledge that they even exist, right?
2019, it led to me nearly losing my life. I was covering another Antifa protest turned riot. At that point, had been routine in Portland. And then I was ambushed in a mob beating. And I had never been in a fight. I didn't even realize that I was being assaulted until seconds in. And the punches came from everywhere on my head and my face, and I was bleeding out of my eyes and ears. And then they threw all the drinks in my eyes to humiliate me further and to laugh at me. And I was rushed to the hospital in an ambulance and CT scan, and I had subarachnoid hemorrhage, which is bleeding in the brain, and nearly died.
Yes. I'm a reporter in Seattle, and frankly, I could not care any less what any of you have to say about this meeting. Could not care any less. We're not here for you. I'm not here to convince any of you that Antifa is a real thing, because if you have not come to that conclusion by now, you are never going to come to that conclusion because you don't want to see it. And you're going to go and you're going to say it's a bunch of right-wing conservative influencers who are here spinning a tale. I was one of you. I was a mainstream reporter in Seattle for 10 years. I was a TV reporter on the streets doing my job, and I was still assaulted by Antifa. So it's not about being conservative. It's about people who go there and show what they're doing. And when I saw, after all those years, that the media wouldn't be honest about what was happening, that Democratic politicians wouldn't be honest about what was happening, I thought, well, gosh, If they're not being honest about that, maybe they're not being honest about President Trump either. And it opened my mind to just looking at things for what they were.
Yeah.
Oh, here's some Antifa mugshots.
Yeah,
That's
there's
fun.
some. That's really fun. That's real rogues gallery there. You see that guy with the burned face? Yeah, he he was an unsuccessful, or I guess a successful arsonist, call it that way. He did end up burning himself, but
Those two
yeah.
guys, the top row middle, look like what I picture when I think of someone from Portland. With the mustache.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I thought the hipster mustaches were. I thought those were out of style. I guess not. So yeah, well done. Head tattoos. I mean, real winners there. What's interesting about that clip, and I definitely encourage everyone, it's very easy to find on social media, or you can just go to C-SPAN and watch the entire summit yourself. The fact that it was necessary to just prove that Antifa is a real thing to some people. Democrats in this country, elected Democrats, keep saying that Antifa is just an idea. Others say, why would you be against an organization fighting fascism? These people, I sometimes, Sam, I don't know, but both of you guys, sometimes I don't know whether these people are just being purposely obtuse, that they know the reality on the ground, but they're just partisans, and politically or journalistically, they don't want to let people know what's happening out there on the streets, that left-wing violence is obviously been a major problem for ever since Donald Trump's, ever since 2020. Left-wing violence on the streets. They think that we don't remember. They think we don't remember cities all across this country burning, and that didn't happen by the Proud Boys didn't do that. The Oath Keepers didn't do that. That was Antifa, along with Black Lives Matter, causing complete chaos.
Well, I was going to say, don't you guys remember those halcyon days in 2016 when Antifa was on campuses and they were attacking conservative speakers and people like Milo Yiannopoulos and stuff? It never went away. Does anybody remember like Based Stickman? If you remember that, it was one like right-winger guy who right-wingers started showing up armed. Not necessarily with firearms, but with like bats and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, people started getting arrested when right-wingers showed up wearing body armor. That's when it was like, okay, this is enough. It was one thing when it was Antifa beating people up with no one able to fight back. But now that people are starting to come prepared to fight back, that's when they have to shut it down. It's just disgusting. Like no one cared in these police departments in Los Angeles or in Portland or in Seattle when right-wingers were getting beaten to a pulp. But Antifa thugs were only arrested once there was enough like social local pressure, public outrage, like that bike lock guy who was a college professor at, I think, UC Berkeley. So am I wrong about the school? I just pulled the school out of my butt. It was some California school, but I feel fairly confident it was Berkeley. But yeah, I mean, that stuff was crazy. I think the bike lock guy, I might be conflating a couple of them because it just happened all the time back then. But wasn't that at an Ann Coulter and Milo Yiannopoulos speech at UC Berkeley? It was something like that. Anyway, it was crazy. And it hasn't stopped, but people stopped talking about it. And a lot of people stopped pushing back publicly on Antifa because they knew that nothing would come of it. So I'm glad to see that Trump, made them a terror organization, because they are one. And people are like, well, they're not like the KKK, or they're not like some very obvious group that has a particular specific funder and stuff, so therefore they don't exist. And as one of our viewers here, Elysian Kentarchy, said, he's quoting from another tweet, a very popular tweet that makes the rounds, and it's amazing how much leftist discourse is just them pretending not to understand things, thus making discourse impossible. And that's exactly right. Everybody knows that how terror cells work is that they are in cells, so that if one of them gets taken out, or if one group of them gets taken out, like Rose City Antifa or something specifically gets shut down, they've got a million other little pop-up hydras that come all over the place. So that come up all from the woodwork all over the place. So it's just, it's extremely frustrating. It is like whack-a-mole, and that's what it's designed to be like.
I just want to mention that your memory is very good. Look at that. This is from a story from 2017. A former East Bay College professor pled not guilty to using a U-shaped bike lock to strike people at a Trump rally in Berkeley last month. So he wasn't a Berkeley professor, but it did happen at Berkeley. He was a professor at another college. Yeah,
that's pretty good. I'll give myself half credit for that.
I think it's very possible for a person to think that there is no particular violence on the left. If you confine yourself to the major media and MSNBC and CNN, little niche audiences like that, if you confine yourself to those spaces, of course you're not going to hear about the horrible things that Antifa has done. That's a choice that people make, and I think it's obviously it's wrong to do that, but it makes sense for them because they don't want to be challenged. They want to be like that the woman in the interview earlier in this show, the representative, because they don't want to be challenged. They don't want to hear that their side is up to some no good things there. The key thing, though, is that this is the violence level here is way beyond, and it has been since 2020, and really before that. Andy Ngo has been getting beat up for a long time, and so,
yeah, I mean they know his face, so that's seriously dangerous. I mean they know him on sight,
right? So it's been going on for a long time, but it hasn't been the police of these cities and states doing it. Of course, it's been these organizations and basically Antifa, which is some sort of network of lunatics. Really, I do think that they are somewhat centrally funded. That a lot of money trickles down to them from very wealthy people. Well, the question though is that why is all this happening in this sort of non-governmental mode? And that's anarcho-tyranny, where the state, the government, decides to let people run wild in order to throw a scare into the public and make the public accept authoritarian action. And interestingly enough, of course, you can spin that also by saying, see, the Trump administration is authoritarian because they're trying to come into the states and do these terrible things. The whole thing, though, is always an effort to get more power concentrated at the upper echelons of the nation, so that you're concentrating economic power, you're concentrating police power, you're concentrating all government authority, and ultimately anarcho-tyranny is all about that. So the question that we need to address is, do we even really have any obligation to wait until state governments and local governments are explicitly knocking heads, as they are doing to people on the right anyway? But do we really have to wait for that? If this is happening, couldn't we just declare these people as domestic terrorists and go after them? Well, obviously that's the point we've reached. And definitely it's going to be called authoritarian, but you have to push through and do the right thing. And I think the public will respond very positively to that.
Yeah, DJ Bo here is totally right. He said, or I guess by extension, Tim Pool is totally right. If he's been saying that to the left, violence is a knob that they turn up slowly. To the right, it's a switch, and we are hesitant to throw it. Yeah, I think that's probably fairly true.
Yeah, let me
But
make one
once
more.
it's thrown, it's it's full throttle.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just let me make one more observation here. It's like this whole idea, and I keep seeing these arguments. I'm still gobsmacked that the left and Democrats are pretending that Antifa and the media that Antifa isn't really a thing. I had a clip I was going to pull for this show of Aaron Burnett saying that very thing on CNN. I think last night that Antifa doesn't really exist. But you know who else doesn't really exist? January 6th. There was no January 6th organization, right? Yet the Biden Justice Department went to the ends of the earth to bring to justice all 1,600 of them. Every single one of them a conviction, by the way, or a guilty plea. Isn't that amazing in Washington, D.C.? But they spared no staff or expense. They showed no restraint, and they were knocking down doors in the middle of the night of, grandmas who took selfies, a lot of these people in January 6th were invited into the Capitol, did not realize they were trespassing. They got overcharged. They got overcharged so much that the Supreme Court had to, they called the 1512C provision in the law that the Justice Department was trying to impose on January 6 people to make them, to basically make them, identify them as terrorists, or make them subject to larger sentences and felonies for parading around. Again, the Biden Justice Department spared no expense and no staff to go down and track down every single one of those people. They set up websites with the faces of these people. Do you know this 78-year-old grandma? Tell us who she is so we can go arrest her. Websites for all of that stuff. And so now the same media and Democrats who applauded that use of federal law enforcement are now saying that it's impossible, or we shouldn't even try to go after just the people that you can identify and see rioting, assaulting, burning, not just conservatives, but federal law enforcement, setting fire to things and rioting. We can't go after those people in the same way we went after January 6th. Damn right we can. And we damn well better, because there's really no difference. You don't need to. I know that Donald Trump in that Antifa summit talked about how they're going to be going after the money, and the organizations and the NGOs and the rich leftists who are funding all of these things. A pallet of bricks doesn't just show up on itself by magic in the middle of a planned protest area. Somebody bought those bricks and delivered them there. So,
and that's stuff the FBI can track.
Absolutely.
And the fires and stuff, you can get the ATF involved, and the ATF is very good at finding people, like scary good. So
I do have to question the premise that there was no January 6th organization. We should look into whether the FBI was that.
Well, yeah.
Well, yeah. And one of the things that people say all the time, even on our side, and I've seen it in our comments section too, is people saying, well, they don't have a centralized funder, so you're not going to be able to track down funders and get them into trouble and stuff. And I think that's not true. If they put the effort, like Jim said, if they put the effort that they put into tracking down January 6ers into this stuff, because just private individuals who are just investigative journalists online tracked down the fact that the Utah Antifa protest groups and stuff had their posters and their protests and stuff being distributed by state socialist groups, like the Socialist Party of Utah. I think I could be misspeaking here, but it's something along those lines. That's where you start. And those guys are posting on Facebook, come to this, anti-fascist, or an anti-fascist self-defense class or whatever. And it has, the same Antifa, colors and logos, and it's got the flag on the poster and stuff. And it's well, maybe they're just using the iconography. But you should still look into that. You can still attend. You could send an FBI agent to this dang Antifa, thing, and they're paranoid about that stuff. So they tend to be kind of careful. But from what I've heard from people who have been embedded in Antifa, they're not all that careful. Like especially if you're like a white guy, they'll treat you like garbage and they'll treat you suspiciously, whether you're on their team or not. But if you can pretend to be a simpering little soy person long enough, you will gain access and you can figure out where that stuff comes from. Don't tell me that the FBI can't do that stuff and doesn't do that stuff towards other groups. You know, how many FBI agents embed themselves in like the Proud Boys, which was just a right-wing drinking club,
Right.
essentially, that ran security for free for conservative speakers on campuses and stuff.
Or
how many?
Or the Gretchen Whitmer
Yeah,
kidnapping that was
exactly.
actually, you know,
Right.
Easy.
accurately called a fednapping, not a kidnapping.
Yeah,
It isn't-
like that stuff
it isn't-
shouldn't be happening. You know, that entire situation was like being set up like that is terrible, and the government should not be doing that. But
It is
when you
important. Oh, sorry.
have that power, when the federal government has legitimate power to like embed agents into groups, and whether you think it should be legitimate or not, but if they have that and we're not doing that to take down groups that like Antifa, what are we doing? What's the point of them?
It is important to recognize that people have the right to organize, that people have the right to get together and talk and even say that communism is a good thing or whatever crazy things they want to say. The
Yeah.
people have the right to do that. But what you don't have a right to do is have a criminal conspiracy against other people's rights. People have a right to their life, liberty, and property. And when you are harming people like Andy, they do to Andy No, and many other people, they've harmed all kinds of people. Many people were killed in riots in the early 2020. So you have the government is supposed to protect our rights. So if you are having conspiracies to deny people their rights, which is what's going on in Antifa, I mean, it's clear that that's the whole purpose of it. If that's what you're doing, then you are breaking the law, and the government should be infiltrating these organizations and destroying them because they are simply outside the law. They're lawless and wrong. And so I think although we don't want the government just to be going after social clubs, this is not that at all. This is something very, very different. It's a massive conspiracy against the people of the United States.
Just one last thing. I mean, I think you would think that both political parties should be able to unite on the principle that violence is not the answer. Violence is not acceptable in any way over a political dispute. And the reason the Democratic Party will not join that is because the Antifa thugs on the streets are useful to them politically. They're the shock troops. They're the ones intimidating dissent from the leftist agenda. And as long as they continue to find them useful, you will not hear I have yet to hear a single Democrat, condemn Antifa, condemn the demonstrations and the riots and the assaults upon ICE officers. Again, up 1,000%. Haven't heard a single Democrat decry that, because and you have to draw the obvious conclusion. This is what they want. They want this, and they're encouraging it. Period.
Absolutely. Things are really getting crazy. That's why I would advise all of our viewers here to look at advisor medals. So a lot of I was excited about that one. I'm so glad you set me up for it. A lot of people in conservative, libertarian, and even just plain old prepper spaces are going to hit you with ads, you guys, for buying precious metals. They're not wrong that they're a good investment, but you want to be careful about who you are buying your metals from. There are a lot of charlatans out there. At In the Tank and also on the Climate Realism Show, we trust Advisor Metals over all of those other guys, and that's because we know that the person running the place is the best of the best. A great friend of Liberty, Ira Bershatsky, I always stumble over the name, I'm sorry, Ira, owns and is the managing member of Advisor Metals. He has decades of experience in precious metals and is the only person in the physical precious metals industry who has the Commodities Futures Trading Commission federal registration. What does that mean for you? Well, it means everything that Ira or a member of his team says to you has to be factual. So there is no sketchy sales pitch or bait and switch. Ira is held to the highest ethical standards, and there is full transparency, which is way too lacking in other places nowadays. So if you want to diversify your investment portfolio and your savings, if you're planning for retirement and are concerned about economic uncertainty, if you want a tangible asset that is easy to buy and sell, you can secure your assets with a wide range of physical precious metals by getting in touch with our friend Ira at Advisor Metals. Ira is going to make it very easy for you to get into this important area. So please visit climaterealismshow.com/metals, and you can leave your information for Ira and get started with investing in precious metals and expand your current portfolio. Go to climaterealismshow.com/metals. And when you talk to Ira, make sure that you let him know who sent you. That means you're helping us while you're helping your financial future by diversifying with precious metals at Advisor Metals. And thank you, as always, to Ira. I don't know if he's watching this time, but we are so grateful for sponsorship on this program and on the Climate Realism Show. It means a lot to us. So I wanted to end this show today on kind of a lighter tone, a lighter topic, but still interesting from an economic and policy focused perspective. And it's an opportunity for Jim and I to be nerds about pop culture again for a second here. So from the Hill, Trump renews threat to impose a 100% tariff on movies made outside of the U.S. President Trump announced Monday he is imposing a 100% tariff on movies made outside of the United States. Our movie-making business has been stolen from the United States of America by other countries, just like stealing candy from a baby, the president posted on Truth Social. Trump did not specify when the tariff would be imposed. It's also unclear how the administration will calculate the value of a film and how the directive would apply to movies that partially film overseas. The president previously threatened those levies on foreign-made films in May. And he also took the moment to criticize California Governor Gavin Newsom, as always, on Monday, calling him weak and incompetent, which is true. In a Monday morning post on social platform X, Newsom's press office called Trump's move 100% stupid. The governor tried to explain this to Trump months ago, they said, when this was initially proposed, that his actions will cause irreparable damage to the U.S. film industry. Well, we're all going to cry over that for sure. So I want to take this, Jim. This is like, you love the pop culture and the Hollywood stuff, but I am not going to let you have it first. I'm going to pass it off to Sam first, because I want to know what he thinks about this particular tariff idea. I don't know. I mean, everyone has a lot of questions about this. What does he mean? Where will the lines on this tariff be? Does he mean like American films that are filmed outside of the United States, like in Canada, where a ton of them and also television shows are filmed? What if the film is set in another country? Would Lord of the Rings have suffered a tariff for filming in New Zealand? Or does he mean like screenings here of entirely foreign-made films, like the recent anime hit movie Demon Slayer, or popular Korean or Scandinavian horror films, which always do well here? Trump said simply that it would apply to any and all movies made outside the United States. Does he mean it, Sam? Wouldn't it make more sense to just give domestic filmmakers like a tax break to film here or something like that, like a positive reinforcement instead of a tariff on this particular issue? I'd like to know your thoughts here.
Thanks, Linnea. The most important thing is to remember that we have to take Trump's statement seriously, not necessarily literally. And the reason he hasn't given any details is because he probably hasn't worked out the details yet, and his team probably hasn't. But what is the serious point behind it? The serious point is that Trump does not care about the benefit and wealth of the film industry. What Trump cares about is the benefit and the health of film workers. So he wants Americans to be working on these films and not people just across the border in British Columbia or Toronto or over in Europe or Asia and so forth. He wants American films he wants as many films as possible to be made with American workers there. So the key thing here, I think, is just to recognize that this is all part of Trump's whole premise as a leader, is that he believes in America first. And for him, the first Americans are working people. The Americans said who he has the most concern about are American workers. And this whole issue is simply part of that. So when Gavin Newsom and his office complain and say, well, Trump is stupid and he's going to ruin the industry, they don't get the point. Trump's not worried about the industry. The industry can go blow as far as he's concerned, and it can go blow up and die. And a new industry, a new form of the industry will arise from that, because people do want movies and they do like movies. And I would point out that I have written about pop culture extensively over the years, and I sort of stopped around 2012, 2014, in that range, because it just got to be so bad I couldn't do it anymore.
Well, and I
But-
was going to say,
But that's what's happening there, is that Trump is defending American workers, and he just does not give as much of a hang about what the industry looks like that employs them. He would rather have power to the workers than to let's say a multinational corporation that shall remain nameless, but is very woke. He would rather have the power to the workers than to Mickey Mouse's owner. Oh, I gave it away.
yeah, we can name and shame Disney on this program. Definitely. We like to do that. Chris Nisbet asks, can Trump please put a tariff on woke movies? And I agree. You know what? This is how we'll do the tariff. I'm going to write this up. I'm going to send it to Trump right now. I'm going to say, if the movie in the box office after the second weekend has a higher critic score than audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, it gets a tariff. that would be a good judgment as to whether or not the movie was woke. We'll see, but yeah, that would be terrific. Yeah, and it is pretty notable how bad most of the stuff coming out of Disney and coming out of Hollywood in general is these days. I mean, I love movies. I like to be up to date, but I just haven't been able to generate the care to watch any new movies. The other night I had some time to watch a movie before or like after dinner, and I was scrolling through Amazon's new releases and stuff and looking at Disney's original like new releases. And I was like, man, I'm going to watch Rear Window because all of this just sucks. I'm not watching any of this garbage.
It's that little barfing emoji that always comes to mind.
Yeah, exactly. And Jim, you have the jar. I don't have the jar. I haven't made the
That's
jar
right.
yet, but you
Jim
get a
pulled
Jim
a
moment.
I knew I was going to do that. I have to do one every show. Yeah, and the last movie I saw in a theater was Superman, and it was okay. And I can't remember the movie I saw before that. I only go to the movies once a year now. I used to go probably a dozen times a year back in the day. And my wife and I, we're just like you, Linnea, we're watching. We're like, all right, we have had dinner. Let's look around, and we'll scroll around. And it is extremely rare for us to pick a movie that was made after 2010. And that was before all the wokeness stuff happened. It's before Believe All Women or whatever it was, the Me Too movement, and all of that nonsense, and girl bossery and remakes that change the ethnicity of half the characters just because diversity is important. And actually, we saw Sherlock Holmes. I'd never seen Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr. because I thought, well, why don't they hire a British actor to play Sherlock Holmes? It's very weird that Robert Downey Jr. would do it. I bet he's terrible. No, he's great. I really enjoyed the movie. It was fantastic. So yes, we watched the two Sherlock Holmes movies back to back. That was 2009 and 2011. So, and it is seriously refreshing to watch quote unquote older movies just from 10 years ago. The difference in tone, talent, writing, it's all so much better. Just even 10 years ago, there's so little that is really even worth watching these days. But to get it back to the tariffs and Sam's point that you should take Trump seriously, but not literally sometimes. This idea is so crazy that I usually Trump's tariff threat is a negotiating tactic. But what is he negotiating? I don't understand what he's doing here. because the fact of the matter is, California leftist politics ruined Hollywood. They left because, with the union rules, with all these regulations, it is literally. There was a channel I watched called Film Threat. I recommend that to everybody on YouTube. He had an independent filmmaker on who explained that, he makes movies for like $1 million or $2 to $5 million, and he can't make a film at all in California for that money because of how expensive it is to produce anything in California. Like he got a fine because the wrong union guy picked up the wrong cable on one of his sets and was reported to the union, and he got fined a few $1,000s for like having the best boy pick something up instead of the key grip, right? So, these sorts of regulations are what drove Hollywood out of California. I mean, you think about how many films that you watch. If you watch all the way to the credits, I actually can't remember the last time I didn't see a film that didn't thank the state of Georgia or thank the state of Tennessee, or Texas at the end of that thing. They filmed the X-Files in Vancouver, not just because of the aesthetics, because it was cheaper. This was back in the 1990s.
Yeah, they always film any movie basically that says that it's like supposed to have an episode in Colorado or something. They're probably filming it in Vancouver. Like if you have a woods scene, it always is a Pacific Northwest woods, and it cracks me up every time as like a tree, like a nature nerd, and you see those woods with the like heavy fog and the ferns and the moss growing up the trees and stuff, and they're like, yeah, this is Arkansas. You're like, okay.
Yeah, well, half the movies that you see that you think are set in New York City are filmed in Toronto.
Yeah.
And most people can't tell the difference. But but how is this tariff again supposed to work? I mean, I think it's so impractical. And I'm just really curious when we finally find out what he's really getting at here. Maybe it's to get Gavin Newsom to increase, tax breaks to keep more productions in California. I mean, if you ever listen to Justine Bateman, who has become, awake instead of woke over the last, 10 years or so, she has fantastic commentary, and she's been saying for quite a while that Hollywood is dead. There's nothing there anymore, and AI is only going to make it worse and faster. There's the democratization of filmmaking now that's going to accelerate with the rise of using AI to make films. So I don't know what Trump is really getting at here. I mean, if I want to go see, one of the best movies I've seen over the last 2 years is Godzilla -1. I paid $15 for that ticket. Is that ticket going to be now $30 because there's a 100% tariff? Is it on the can of film that comes in? Is it on?
Yeah.
I don't understand. I don't understand how this can be enforced.
Yeah. Well,
but his intent is to get more filmmaking done in the United States instead of exporting it to Canada and other places. But when you have spent 3 decades disincentivizing making productions in California, in Hollywood, you can't fix that with a tariff, and you can't fix it overnight, I don't think.
Yeah, and
I do think it's interesting that Newsom has basically said that this will destroy the film industry in Hollywood. You already did that. All your regulations and favoritism toward unions and so forth have already destroyed the film industry. So it's Georgia and Texas and North Carolina and places like that really care about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm all for punishing Hollywood, but punishing them by showing them that their stuff is mostly crap right now. And there was a good article in the Federalist the other day by Evita Duffy Alfonso, who wrote a article saying why Demon Slayer speaks to the soul and Disney doesn't. And she was comparing the income or the box office numbers that a Japanese film got and its scores that it got after its opening weekend. 98% audience and critic score, $70 million on its opening weekend. And DreamWorks and Pixar both had movies come out this weekend, all right, recently. I didn't hear about either of these. I had no idea that DreamWorks and Disney Pixar both released new movies, and they flopped big time, hard. And and the question is like, why is this stuff making people like, why is a Japanese, like an anime movie killing it, just slaughtering the box office for like a young adult or a children's film versus like the most famous children's films producers on the planet, right?
Very simple. There's no DEI hiring in Japan.
Yeah, and I think that's probably true. Oh, thanks. You didn't have to pull it up, but thank you for pulling it up. But the article is really interesting and really good. The writer, she goes into some description of the plot of the anime film and talking about how like this stuff is like they take on heavier topics and take them more seriously and have, you know, themes of like honor and stuff. And American films just can't seem to figure out how to do that anymore. And that's part of the reason probably why people like so many people are turning to foreign films and foreign animation and stuff over American.
Well,
Yeah,
what happened?
and Lascelles on Rumble says the Japanese and Koreans have not abandoned traditional storytelling. That's why their products are better. And I think you're right.
Yeah, and again, how would this tariff be? Like Squid Game was an enormous hit
Yeah,
for
Squid Game.
Netflix. So what happens there? I mean,
Yeah.
do I get a surcharge on my monthly Netflix bill because I watched? Yeah, I don't understand. I just don't understand how this could be remotely enforced. I really don't. But again, I it's going to be curious to see what he's getting at. Maybe he just wants to piss off Gavin Newsom. I don't know, but I don't understand how any of this could be enforced.
Oh, John Z in our comments, Jim, has a comment for you. He says there's a community that you might not be aware of called Geeks and Gamers and Friday Night Tights. It's a group of about 100 individuals that work together to report on entertainment. Yeah, both Jim and I are fans.
Big fans
So
of both
thank you.
those channels. Yeah, I watch Friday Night Tights every week. It's great.
It's very fun. Alrighty, well, you guys, we've done our hour-and-a-half show. That's, I think, all the time that we have. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We are live every single week on Thursdays at noon Central on Rumble, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. We are all over the place. So, Jim, what do you have for us to close out on?
Well, I want you to, if you enjoyed this show, you're really going to enjoy tomorrow's show as well. That is the Climate Realism Show, which we broadcast every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We are going to have a hurricane expert on to talk about what happened to all the hurricanes. It's hurricane season, and not one has hit the United States. We went through it all entire September. First time in 10 years, not one storm hit the U.S. So we'll be talking about that and crazy climate news of the week. And Linnea will also be there.
Absolutely. Sam?
Thanks. Please visit heartland.org and look at all the fantastic policy analysis we have there. I think you'll find plenty to stimulate your thinking and get you on the right side of things.
Awesome. So for audio listeners, as I said, please rate us well on whatever service you're using. Leave a review. It really helps us out. Thank you so much to all of our usual panelists and the ones who could not be here as well. So thank you guys. We will see you again next week.
Blah 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 blah.